Welcome to AM. My name's Richard Conway, and this is the platform for age group multisport athletes to showcase their journeys. Welcome along to episode 30 of the Age Group Multisport podcast. And yep, we've reached the big 30 episodes. That seemed a long way off when I started this in lockdown, but we keep rolling on, keep getting guests who want to come on, so that's great. I hope you're enjoying them. I've learnt a lot since I started this, and I've met some fantastic people along the way. So thank you to them. Couldn't have done it without them. And thank you to you guys for listening and giving us the support. On episode 30, we have Hannah Sangan. And Hannah is a young lady who has just finished a PhD in sports science. And she's got a background growing up as a swimmer and a runner. And when she was at university, she got into biking. So, as I said to her during the interview, it was inevitable that she was always going to get into triathlon at some point. And she goes into detail as to how that happened, and also she tells us a little bit about the pressure that she puts herself under, or has put herself under, before competing, and how she's dealt with that. So that's quite interesting. And she's also got a background in coaching. She was coaching, or has been coaching since she was 15, athletics, I believe. So yeah, lots of knowledge. And at the end of the interview, she goes into a few bits and pieces about the sports science and what she did a PhD in, and how it can be applied to us in triathlon and multisport in general. So yeah, a great interview. That's coming up. So what's been going on since the last pod? Well, it's Monday the 7th of June as this has been recorded, and this weekend just gone was the WTC event at Leeds, Roundhay Park, where they, on the 5th and the 6th, which was the Saturday and the Sunday, held a weekend, and they put on events from Go Try right the way up to hosting the elites. And I'd entered to race the standard event, which was a qualifier for the Worlds next year, on the Sunday morning. And it was a standard distance, which is 1500 metres swim, 40k bike, although the bike was only 37k, and a 10k run. And I hadn't realised that I hadn't done a standard distance since 2017, which was also Leeds. A slightly different course, because this one that we did yesterday was pretty much all up by Roundhay Park. The bike went out a little bit, but the rest of it was all in Roundhay, whereas other years they've ventured down to Leeds city centre and brought it out to the masses. And obviously with COVID they couldn't do that this year. So we were starting quite early. We all had slots to go into the venue itself, where we got temperature tested, and they took our queue registration, and then we made our way on to registration itself, and it all ran very smoothly. We're all socially distanced, we're all wearing our masks, and then once we'd registered and got our stickers on our helmets and our bikes, we could go down to transition and rack up. So we were racing, I think they started the first ones in at 7 o'clock. I got in about 7:36. They were setting us off two at a time at 2.5 second intervals down the ramp, which again is different to what they've done previously. It was usually is a mass start, as you probably are aware. So it was quite nice actually not having that mass start. You could see where you were swimming. There was no washing machine environment, and yeah, it was pretty good. Downside to that was there wasn't much drafting going on, and but it was good. The water temperature was nice and warm at about 18 degrees. So again, that was a bonus. A lot warmer than what we've been swimming in recently. So got around the swim, got out. It wasn't a fantastic time. It was a bit slower than previous years, but I suppose that's to be expected, not having much swimming availability over the last year or so. And then it was a 400 metre run up to transition, getting your wetsuit off as you went up, down to waist height, and then into transition, getting it off completely, putting your helmet on, grabbing your bike, and again it was another 400 metres run to the line, the mountain line, and then straight up a hill. So you have to make sure that you're in the right gear. Unfortunately, I'd done it quite a few times previously, so I knew what was to be expected, knew what was coming. The bike course, if you've ever done it, you'll know it's quite undulating, lots of ups and downs, and lots of tight turns now on this one due to being restrained on the course, due to the course being a bit more compact than it has been in the past. 2 laps, there was that many people on the road, it was just impossible not to be up close to somebody at some point. I don't think many people got penalties for that. I think the organisation was quite aware of the amount of people they had on the road, so I think if anything they were quite lenient. And to be honest, I didn't see anybody drafting on purpose anyway, to be fair. So so 2 laps of that loop, 37k I think it was, and then back into transition, 400 metre run back to racking the bike and getting the run shoes on, and then out onto another undulating course around Ayr Park itself. Quite a nice run, and started cramping on the second lap. It was 3 laps, and started cramping on the second lap, even though I had hydrated, or I thought I'd hydrated enough over the week prior to it, but still got some cramps. Anyway, ran through that, got through it, and finished the run in a decent time. I was quite pleased with the time. Not pleased with the overall performance, but I was nowhere near qualifying. The guys who were at the top of the game were just far superior, and I just never stood a chance really. It just shows when you haven't done anything at a certain distance for quite some time that you've got a lot of work to do if you want to compete in that environment. So, but it was an enjoyable weekend. Got to meet my son up there. He lives in Leeds, so he came to watch. So we got to spend the day together and watch the elite race, and that was just fantastic. Both the ladies and the men's. A big congratulations to Jess Lamont and Sophie Caldwell in the women's race, and what a race Alex Yee put together for his first win in the pro ranks. So hopefully it's one of many and he goes on to get into the Olympics. So all in all, a great weekend. Really enjoyed it, and not sure what the next race is going to be for me, but we'll keep training once the aches and pains from the legs have gone. Going to take it easy this week now, and we'll look for the next race. And apologies if you can hear the deluge of rain that's just decided to come down upon us outside. It's been like that all day. It's been horrendous. I've had to work as a gardener outside between the showers. Unfortunately, I've been able to do that, so that's all right. So yeah, onwards and upwards. So on to the main event. Coming up is our interview with Hannah Sangan. Hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the other side. So, welcome along to AMP, and thank you for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're on episode 30. Can't believe it already. I started this in lockdown, and we've got up to 30.
Amazing.
So thank you for reaching out and agreeing to come on, because you were the last person that I had on my list. So I put a post out to everybody to see if we could get some more guests, and fortunately I've got 5 more come on, so that's good news.
Oh, fantastic. That's great.
Because it's just great to hear people's stories, I think. So
yeah, definitely. I love hearing it. So different for each person. It's great.
yeah, it is. So tell me a bit about yourself then.
So currently at the moment, 2 days ago, I handed in my PhD thesis, which was a long battle. I got there in the end.
And what was that on?
So it's on overtraining in endurance runners and looking at how we can recognize the signs early through monitoring and simple tests that recreational athletes can do, not just, having to go into a lab. What else is out there? So it was really interesting, really applied. I got to work with some incredible people, some balmy athletes. I did one study with ultramarathon athletes, and they are just another breed of athlete completely. They're incredible. Had some really, really great times with all the participants that I had. But yeah, it was a bit of a slog in the end writing it all up.
And what did you do your degree in?
So I did my master's degree at Liverpool John Moores in sport physiology.
Okay.
And then I did my undergraduate at the University of Birmingham in sport and exercise science.
Right. And what did I'm only asking these questions because I did a degree in sports science also many years ago. So we did things like exercise physiology, sports psychology, biomechanics. Was that the sort of thing that you've
exactly? Yeah, exactly. I think they're all pretty similar. It's great because they give you that huge breadth of, as you say, you get to do a little bit of nutrition, a little bit of psychology, a little bit of physiology, but it was physiology that really sparked my interest. So that's why I kind of went on and did my master's in sports physiology, and I still felt like I had unanswered questions, so went on and did my PhD.
Yeah. So now you're like you said, you're back at home. So what are you hoping to do? Have you got something lined up now?
Yeah, I'm already in full-time work with British Cycling.
Oh, cool.
It's a brilliant role as a community activator. So I'm just basically getting more bums on bikes, doing everything we can through their kind of recreational programs to reach a wider audience and get more people involved in cycling, which I think is a great time to enter into the role, because there's been a huge influx of people dusting off their bikes through lockdown and getting back out there and, enjoying their local cycling routes, because it's been a bit quieter maybe with the traffic, or they've had more time because they're not rushing to work. So it's a great time to kind of take on a role like that. And I've loved it so far.
Excellent. That's really good. So that's a bit of what you're doing now. So, but how did you begin sport, and what were you into when you were a kid?
Yeah, always been sporty. Not necessarily brilliant at it, but always enjoyed it. So we started off. I've got an older sister, swimming, and I remember very early on sitting and waiting by a hot poolside, just watching her train with the club and being so eager and really, really wanting to go and join in. And I think I joined in pretty much as early as they would take me. My mum kind of asked, like, how young do you take them? Can we get Hannah involved? So yeah, I did that and raced as soon as they would let me as well, and kind of carried on that swimming. So swimming was always there. And at school I had loads of opportunities to try a range of sport, and PE was always the best lesson for me. I absolutely loved it. So I was always doing loads and loads of sport. And I think I got my first kind of taste of running and athletics really not until kind of senior school. And I absolutely loved it. I think probably the swimming training made me have a natural edge on everybody else, just because I'd had that conditioning from such an early age. But I really loved it. So then I had that kind of difficult decision, because swimming was wanting me to go in before school, because I'd got to kind of county level and they were pushing me towards national. So it was more training hours and it was a bit of a drive away from my parents. And I really liked my athletics as well. And I had a new group of friends there. It was a little bit more relaxed. So I made the jump really, and I kind of decided to ditch the swimming and go on to running. So I kept that up for a little while. Really, I think until probably what resonates with most people is kind of sixth form and exam pressures and social pressures to go out at the weekends, and you don't really. I did drop off from sport a little bit, I think, between that kind of 17, 18 years of age, but put it all into my academics, and I really, really enjoyed my my physical education still. So I still enjoyed kind of reading about sport and learning about sport. So I think I kind of deferred that energy into the book side of things, which I don't know, may have served me well in the end. But yeah, picked everything back up when I went to university, and they had a little bit more of a kind of recreational feel, I think, to the sport. There was that kind of pressure that I'd felt from swimming at an early age had kind of been a bit more relaxed in the university setting, and you could take part just for fun. And I slowly got back into races again. And did it. That's where I started cycling as well. So I started cycling a bit with the university team.
I mean, I've had quite a few guys who've been on, and they've been swimming for clubs and county and nationals, and it's you know, you're swimming twice. Did you swim twice a day at some point, morning and evening?
Exactly.
It is. It's a big thing, and the drop off at some point in swimming must be massive, absolutely massive. Because like you either get burnt out, or not. You got burnt out, but they get burnt out, or they just get sick of it and want to try other things, because it is such a commitment, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think I've seen it as well. So more recently, I've worked with a fantastic swimming club down near Kent when I was doing my PhD, and I was supporting them with kind of sport science and testing. But even from such an early age, you know, they were asking for that kind of additional support, and it really is a very pressure-filled environment. And I think they are very much still in a kind of old school thinking of more is better and let's get more training hours. And some of these kids were training until kind of like 9 or 10 o'clock at night, just because there isn't the pool time either. So I think that it's a sport that I think a lot of people end up burning out in, as you say. But maybe
what a great I was just going to say, what a great sort of environment to come through for triathlon and aquathon and things, to have that base. You know, I would have died for that when I was, you know, being a kid and having that ability and that technique, because that'll never go. You'll always have that. You'll always be ahead of the pack in the swimming if you've had such a swimming background, won't you?
Absolutely. I'm so grateful for that opportunity. I think definitely from coaching experience, you can tell those athletes that haven't had that swimming background and have to work so hard on their swim. And it's so difficult, isn't it? It must be so difficult to pick up that technique at a later age, when you haven't maybe got the flexibility or range of movement that you would have had when you were younger, and to get that feel for the water. So yeah, I am forever grateful for my parents pushing me into swimming at an early age. I think it was
just hold on. You'll never lose it, but just hold on to it and embrace it, and as I'm sure you are doing. So yeah, that's really good. So how you got into the running side of things, and how did that develop?
Yeah, I think, as I say, I wasn't brilliant at it. I kind of reached county level, barely, kind of scraping through.
And what events were those?
So that was for cross country.
Right.
Yeah, for cross country. So I always did the summer season at the track as well, and loved doing the 1500 and 800. And it's funny because we always had to do a field event as well. Right. And I'm tiny, like shortest kid. I really didn't grow at all, and I couldn't think really of any field events that would be a strength to me at all. And they always used to put me in for hammer, and I would be there with these women, because it was a women's league. So 30, 40-year-old women who were much bigger and stronger than me, and then I would drag the hammer through and try and throw it. But I just loved that environment, and I loved being able to try different things, and kind of bounce from cross country to field events and track events. So I quite liked the athletics environment. So I think that's probably served me well for triathlon as well, is having that range of skills and not just funneling into one sport.
Yeah, and the adaptability as well.
Yeah,
brilliant.
Definitely. No, but I loved it, and it was a really social sport to do as well. So yeah.
So from there, how did you find out about triathlon? Because what was your route in?
Yeah, to be honest, I'd never really thought about triathlon. I think it had always seemed as a student like quite an expensive sport to do, which I think is still true. Even the club at university, the membership was expensive. I didn't have a wetsuit, and everything seemed a little bit out of my reach as a student. And then when I did my PhD, I had a kind of job. I had a little bit more money coming in. And there was a local triathlon club that I was able to join. So signed up and went to my first session and absolutely loved it. They had a really good swim program and track sessions and cycling sessions as well. They are just situated in a really great environment down in Kent. That there's loads of opportunity. So yeah, I just loved it, and I think it was being able to have a little bit of everything, like have all my cake and eat it. So I got to do the swimming again, which I hadn't done for a while. I got to be at the track, and I got to do my cycling. Like, what's better to have all those three things that I really enjoyed, and being able to put them all together. So it was just kind of opportunity, and really not that long ago. So just a couple of years ago.
Was it really?
Yeah.
So, but how did you find out about triathlon? Was it at university, and did you ever do anything there with the club, or was it just purely when you'd finished?
Yeah, so I did. My another one of the PhD students was coaching at the club. And he was looking to get more people involved. So he kind of said to me, come along, just try a session. So it was word of mouth, really, that I kind of.
And had you watched anything on the TV, or had you heard of the Brownlees, or you watched?
A little bit. I'd heard of the Brownlees. I'd watched it, but no, I don't think it was ever really on my radar. I'd never even thought of, I'd done these three sports. I'd never even really thought of putting it together. So no, I can't really think why either now, but
it was inevitable, wasn't it?
Yeah, I guess it was. I guess I almost trained myself into being a triathlete without realizing. So yeah.
You were doing swimming, running and biking. You didn't know it at the time, but it was to do triathlon.
Exactly.
It got you in the end. Fantastic. Yeah, it's funny how it all comes together, isn't it?
Definitely.
So what was your first try, and what distance?
First triathlon I did was in Arundel, and it was a sprint triathlon. It was a pool swim. Hadn't done any open water yet. So it's a pool swim. And I remember I jumped on my bike, and it was on a road, got to the roundabout, and was trying to brake, and I hadn't put my brakes back on after putting the bike in the back of my car and putting it on. So I was trying to brake for the roundabout. So not a great first experience. And then I think on the bike course, I went the wrong way completely as well. So I had to turn around and come back. So I had a lot of work to do on the run. But really, really enjoyed it. And I think I came third in my for the women's as well.
So I've got a couple of questions on this. Right?
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. The first one, can you remember the time you did in the pool?
Oh, no, I can't remember. Maybe I should have looked before I came.
That's all right. I was just interested, being a swimmer, and what you did.
I think I had that a good advantage, which probably meant that I could mess around a bit on the bike, which I did.
Yeah. And the second one was, if you didn't, were the brakes actually off the bike completely, or were they just not fixed? And how on earth did you get through the whole cycle without any brakes?
So I always take my front wheel off when I'm shoving my bike in the back of my car, and I'd put it back on, but I hadn't, fixed the brakes back on, clicked them down. So got to the roundabout and realised they weren't on. I managed to jump onto the pavement on the side and then click them back on and did the rest of the ride without it. But every time now I get into transition, I check that my brakes are on. So lesson learned.
Well, exactly. You know what I mean? We've all done stupid things that we learn from, because you don't learn by doing everything right, do you? So it's, these things that you remember and you think, I've been there, I'm not going to do that again. So brilliant. Yeah. And the run went well, I take it.
Yeah, I loved the run. And I have always weirdly loved that jelly leg feeling that you get. I feel like that first kilometer, I don't know, I really enjoy it. I think everyone else hates that jelly leg feeling, but I don't know,
it's almost like an out of body experience, isn't it?
Exactly. That is exactly it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree with that. So after you'd completed that, you'd got the bug, obviously. What was next?
Yeah, I think I did a couple more, really just local ones. Did the first kind of open water one. I think that must have been a local one near Kent. And I think from the club that I was in, Medway Triathlon Club, they had a couple of age groupers, and I started asking the questions about what it was, what it meant, because it's not something that's really, I don't know, is relatable to any other sport. I don't think any other sport really has that kind of age group opportunity. So learned about that, and kind of started asking the questions, how can I qualify, and realized that for the aquathon, which probably was better suited for me because my bike was probably my weakest point, you just needed to submit some times and then see if you qualified. So I did that, and managed to qualify for my age group for the Worlds in Pontevedra.
Where was that?
Sorry?
Where was that, sorry?
That was in Pontevedra.
Pontevedra.
Yeah. And went along to that and absolutely loved it.
Yeah, we'll touch that one in a minute. So I've got a couple more questions. The first one, you said about getting into open water, right? So I'm interested, from a pool swimmer, getting into open water and wearing a wetsuit. How did you find that? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I went in really early on. I think I made a mistake. I went for my first open water swim in mid-April, which now is, the trend, but I think it was far too cold. I was absolutely freezing, and I wasn't expecting, because I thought I was quite confident in the water. Water's never been something I'm scared of. I always go into the sea, I'm absolutely fine. But I wasn't prepared for that cold shock that you get. And I was out of breath, and I was very much out of my depth and out of my comfort zone. I really did panic. And I really could only swim like 100 meters, and I got out and I was just terrified. And I was like, that's so weird. I've never had that experience. I'm a confident swimmer. so I always keep that in mind now when I'm coaching people as well.
Yeah.
That open water is actually quite a scary thing to do, especially when it's that cold shock. I think a lot of people underestimate it. And I certainly did. So my first experience of open water was that shocking
Yeah.
realization that,
Yeah.
it's not as easy as some people make it look.
No, I've
Um,
got a race a week's time in Leeds, and I literally went in for the first time because it's been so cold still. So I went
yeah.
in, I went in literally for the first time last week to open water. Went straight back to the pool when we could, when we were allowed, and I've been swimming in the pool. But I got back into open water. Well, I lasted longer than I thought. I lasted 30 minutes, but it was so cold. I couldn't
Oh,
feel
well
my
done.
feet and my hands when I got out. And I went in again on Wednesday, and it was worse. It was even worse. So I don't know how I'm going to fare at Leeds when I get. I don't know how I'm going to, because I couldn't feel my feet or my hands. So I don't know how I'm going to work on the bike when I get there. But it'll be what it'll be. So yeah, it is. If you haven't experienced it, it's a real shock. So another question, bearing in mind you're coaching people as well, what would you tell people? What advice would you give them, or what advice do you give them when they're going to go into open water for the first time and
Yeah,
experience what you experience and what we all do?
exactly. I think the best piece of advice I can give to someone is you are in control. I think often once you get that first 30 seconds, which is hard to avoid, it's part of your physiology that you'll start to have that kind of panic and stress response, where you're kind of gasping, is just to remember that you are in control. You are in control of your body. And it's up to you to then, after that initial reaction, which, isn't necessarily in your control, after that, you are in control of your breathing, you are in control of what your body does, and not to feel panicked. Take your time, familiarize yourself with the water, splashing your
Yeah,
face,
yeah. I was just going to
breathing
say,
techniques.
one of the things that I was told was to actually splash water on the back of your neck before you even go into the water, and just it'll acclimatize you, and the same on your face, I suppose. But do that, and it does seem to work. You
Yeah,
know, it
yeah,
helps
absolutely.
physiologically.
And just slow and steady, I think. Get your breathing before you rush off. So don't feel like if you're in a group of experienced people and they dive straight in and go, that is something you need to do as well. Take
Yeah,
your time with it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think that's probably the
yeah.
advice
I think
I
that.
give.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. And the other thing I was going to say, you were talking about you'd gone in for the aquathon, but before that, the other question was going to be, you found out about age groupers because in your club, I usually ask how did you find out, but you stated in your club there was already age groupers in there, so you were aware. And you're right, there isn't, if you don't know anybody about it, it's usually people just stumble across age grouping, and or see somebody with a tri suit with GB in the name on it, and they think, oh well, what's all that about? It's not really that common known, is it? Unless you know somebody like you did, if you're new to the sport. So that was pretty good for you to be able to ask people, speak to people about that and get their advice on it. Again, because it's all we've basically got to work ourselves through it, haven't we? The process of how you qualify and everything, and it's not straightforward. Once you know, but yeah, it's not straightforward. So, and the other thing I was going to say was, I think it's fantastic that you recognised your strengths. So you went for an aquathon. So you obviously your swimming is a given, and you're running as well, and you're not so good on the bike at the moment, or then. So you went for the aquathon. I think that's just brilliant. That's just so much knowledge of yourself, isn't it? That you know, and you use that to your advantage, and it's well done, to you for that. But yeah, those were the points that I wanted to make. So you really enjoyed Pontevedra, and how did you get on your first race?
Yeah, I loved it. So I hadn't done much open water swimming before, and I certainly hadn't done a mass start like that before. And I was very, very nervous. I am a bit of a perfectionist. I put a hell of a lot of pressure on myself. I think my parents and my family never put any pressure on me to do well in anything really. They love that I just take part, but I put a hell of a lot of pressure on myself in kind of all walks of my life. And I had a brilliant swimming coach, Barry, who coaches at Medway Tri, and he recognized in training that I was getting really stressed out, really caught up in the pool, really panicky. And he took me aside one session and just gave me a bit of a pep talk, and talked me through some psychological strategies to help when I got to the competition, when I was training. A lot of it was self-talk, and so often I would get to the start line, and I think probably a lot of people, particularly women, probably feel this when you get to the start line and you see a lot of people with really great equipment. They look incredible. There's a lot of chat about what training camp they've been on and everything. And I always psych myself out then. And I think, oh God, I'm never going to be able to do this. This is the world. It's like, I shouldn't be here. This is amazing. And I really psych myself out. And he just said to me, when you're at that start line, look around and say to yourself, everyone should be scared of me. They should be looking at me and thinking that, because I've put so many hours in at training. I've done, exactly what I wanted to do before I've come here. My training has been exactly what I wanted to achieve. So people should be scared of me. And naturally, that's nothing I would ever have said to myself in my head. I would always go and defer to the complete opposite, which I think a lot of girls often do, is think, oh, I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm terrible compared to everyone else. But that shift in mentality really helped me to focus and just get the job done. So I'm forever thankful for him for that pep talk before I went. And it made me enjoy it a lot more, I think, as well, because I wasn't scared as much as I probably would have been. And yeah, I loved it. I actually really enjoyed the battle that happened in the open water swim. There was a really strong current, I remember. And I think we watched the para triathletes go off before us.
Mm-hmm.
And that was so inspirational to watch them swim. And I just thought, what, if they can do it, what am I scared of? I need to get in there and do what I've been training for as well. So that was an incredible thing to watch beforehand. And I would certainly advise anybody who is going out to do a competition to make the most of it and go and watch other people doing the race before you, because it really is inspiring. So that really helped as well. And yeah, I had an all right swim. I knew that I wasn't anywhere near the front. There were some very, very strong swimmers in my my age group. A couple I'd known from university and swum at university with them. So I knew they were going to be very good in the swim. So I knew that I actually would have to make up quite a lot on the run. And yeah, I think I just had a bit of an out of body experience and just absolutely went for it. And I remember seeing my dad, they'd made a little sign for me saying, "Go, Hannah, go." And I saw that sign and I just absolutely went for it. And yeah, I came 7th in the end in my age group, which I was really impressed with, because it was a tough field. So yeah.
You've got to be impressed for your first event, becoming 7th. That's really well done. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, you're right about you're right on a number of things that you just said there. But the things I pick out about being inspired by other people. I was doing Redcar a few years back, and the weather was absolutely horrible, and it was a sea swim, and I was there with a club mate who's 74. And we were stood on the side, and they nearly cancelled the swim. And we were stood on the side hoping that they were going to cancel the swim. And then the next thing we know, you've got all these ladies gone into the water, and we're like, wow, well, if they're going to do it, we're going to do it as well, So, being inspired by watching other people going is bang on, absolutely. And And yeah, that self talk, isn't it? It's so powerful. We are our thoughts, aren't we? So that, big up to Barry for giving you that talk and pulling you aside, and because it's so strong. I mean, the older I get, the more I realize that actually what I think, it's what I think. It's not what, it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It's what I think that counts. That's going to make me feel the way I feel. And that's so powerful. So yeah, I mean, you can continue doing that within your racing, and, talk yourself up rather than talking yourself out of it. It's marvelous. So well done on all those points that you've brought out there. Really important. So from coming back from Pontevedra, getting seventh, well done again. Brilliant. What was the next step? What did you want to do next?
Oh, I just absolutely got the bug then. But I think watching the full triathlon at the Pontevedra in the standard distance and the sprint distance, I really wanted to get kind of qualification for either a sprint or a standard. I wasn't too sure what I would be better at. So I had a go. I did the Windsor triathlon, which is brilliant. I would recommend that to anybody. Really, really well organized event, and lovely scenery. Bit of a hill, but very good. So I did that. I did the standard, and came third in my age group, and kind of decided that maybe standard is where I should go from here on. And that was only 2 years ago, so I managed to fit that in, and then had a really good kind of winter's training. Was really looking forward to 2020 racing, as I'm sure many people were.
Yeah.
And I had been very, very fortunate that after qualifying for age group, my university had put me on their sports scholarship scheme,
Okay.
which I was so grateful for. They helped with strength and conditioning. I got lessons with that, and they helped some of my funding. So I was in a great position to be able to race in 2020. And yeah, didn't happen,
No,
unfortunately.
no.
Um,
The rest is history, as they say.
definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. And I think I really struggled with that, actually, not having the races, because I'm definitely a goal focused
Hmm.
person when it comes to training. I like having something to aim for, and I love competing and the adrenaline I get from that. So yeah, I definitely found that difficult this summer. But yeah, I've entered in my times to be able to
Yeah.
qualify, and I have qualified for the sprint for the Europeans in
Okay.
Valencia this year.
Yes.
So
Yeah. See you there.
yes, good, good. Yeah, how are you finding it, knowing that you've got something coming up, but it might or might not happen? Are you finding it difficult with training?
No, I'm train driven anyway. That's what I do. It's what, whether I
Good.
didn't have anything to race a goal makes no difference. I'll still go out and bike and run, definitely swim. I wouldn't be bothered probably getting in the open water, but I would pool swim with the club. So I'm train focused, and just what we do. Both myself and
Brilliant.
my wife do it. So it's part of what we do. So it's not really an issue. It's disappointing that we can't, like I'd qualified for Targu, Almere, and Valencia this year. Targu's written off till next year now. So we've got Almere, and we've just had an email through, not sure whether that's going to take place or not. So it is what it is, isn't it? There's no point, and you just gotta keep in. As I always say at the end of the show, enjoy the process. That's it.
Yeah.
And if we race, then it's a bonus, and if we don't, then it'll be the year after, and we've just got to take it like that. That's my outlook on it. Because what's the point of beating yourself up, really?
Definitely. No, definitely. I think that's certainly something we've all had to learn,
Yeah,
whether we wanted to or not,
yeah,
this year. I'm currently coaching a brilliant athlete. He had an ambition to do a marathon in each of the four poles. So he
right.
was doing the North and the South Pole, the Red Sea, and then Everest. So sort of
Wow.
latitude wise, all of them. Um, and they all got cancelled. And we'd
Yeah,
done most recently his one to Everest got cancelled, and we'd been through 12 weeks of altitude training, quite intense training for it, in the snow and the wind and the rain. And he got the message only really 2 weeks before he was going to go out that it wasn't going ahead. And I've learned so much from him in the way that he has dealt with that disappointment.
Yeah.
Because, you know, in all honesty, I probably would have thrown all my toys out the pram and been really upset. But he pretty much a couple of days afterwards sent me an email with, you know, a list of skills that he wanted to train. So we'd been so focused on his performance and his aerobic conditioning for Everest. And he's now come back with me with a list of things for his running technique. You know, he really wants to get parts of his nutrition sorted. So I think I've learned a lot from that, in that, you know, it doesn't always have to be towards a race or a performance goal. You can have technique goals or, you know, other parts of your performance that will inevitably help your race in the long run, that can also be something to work towards. And definitely when we don't know that races are going to happen, it's a great time to start refining those skills that we've been putting on the back burner for a little while. So yeah, I definitely learn from people like yourself and him that are able to turn it around a bit.
I think in my take on it all, and I'm a lot older than you, obviously, is, well, all right, maybe a little bit, no, a lot older than you, is that I'm in it for a longevity race. Does that make sense? So I've hit 53, nearly 54 this year. And so for me, it's how long can I go? That's the race. Everything else is a bonus. Racing's a bonus, but it's the longevity. But not only living longer, but having a good lifestyle to go with it. So being there mentally, physically, you know, at whatever age, because otherwise there's just no fun. I'm a gardener and I work with a lot of old people, and it's so sad. It is so sad. And I saw both my parents go the same way, and it's not a trip that you want to go down, not a road you want to go down. So that for me is the, you know, and people won't appreciate that until you get to, you know, a certain age. I wouldn't expect you to appreciate that at your young age yet, and nor should you. You've got your whole life in front of you. But for me, it's that's the race, that's the goal. So yeah, I can appreciate people all have different, you know, and the race is the thing, and it is important. Don't get me wrong, that's what we work towards. But I think there's more to it, the bigger picture. And he's great because he's just like channeled in, right, can't do that. Fair enough. Not going to beat myself up about it, because where does that get you? It's going back to those thoughts, isn't it? Those mental thoughts. Yeah, you can be annoyed and angry, but is that going to change the thing? No. Is it going to do you any good? No. Is it going to make you feel any better? No. So what's the point? You know, just let's focus on the things we can do rather than the things we can't do, you know. So
Exactly.
that's fab. Yeah, that is a good lesson, isn't it? And it's working with people like these must be brilliant for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I learn so much from all the people that I coach. I think I'm so fortunate to be able to coach. I think it's a brilliant thing to be able to do, because you get to know people so well, because it isn't just the training you're doing. You do become a bit of a life coach for them as well, as you say. It is more about the whole process, and yeah, I learned so much.
And long may it continue, eh?
Yeah,
We're always
definitely.
learning, aren't we? Doesn't matter what age you get, we're always learning. Every day's a school day, and I think if you can soak it up, it's more the better. So
Yeah,
brilliant.
definitely.
So that's the GB. So we'll go on to the generic questions that I always ask. What advice would you give to anybody wanting to start triathlon, or anybody who wants to qualify for GB?
Good question. Actually, I think it ties in quite well with what you were just saying, is that think about the longer term goal. And I think a lot of age groupers are maybe falling into the trap of training too hard too quick, and inevitably working their way to a bit of burnout, and looking for that training that is what I call high risk but high reward. So it's those sort of, from January, I think a lot of people think, booking my first triathlon, I've got a couple of months to do it, but I've mainly, only got 5 hours a week to train. So all of their training is done really high intensity. They're really going for it, really put their heart and soul into it. But it's that training that is high intensity, that is high rewards for a certain amount of time, but then high risk. So although you're getting that stimulus for adaptation, and you will see that you're getting quicker and getting faster quickly, it's also a really high stimulus for systemic stress. So that's the kind of stress that you get that has those stress hormones going around your body, leaves your resting heart rate a little bit higher, leaves you more prone to injury, and inevitably the quality of your training will go downhill, and you'll end up stagnating. And I think I've seen that in a lot of athletes that decide in January that they want to qualify in that summer, and kind of go for that high risk training for the first couple of months. So my advice would be to train wisely, train smart, go for what we call that kind of 80-20 training. So 80 at that low intensity, long endurance running, where you're still getting a really, really good stimulus for adaptation. So it's a kind of medium to high reward, but you're lowering that risk as well. And then add in those couple of sessions where on a weekday you've maybe only got 1 hour or half an hour even before you need to jump onto your laptop, and do those high intensity sessions then. But really having a kind of continuous consistent training that follows that 80-20, that is sustainable, it's low risk, you'll see yourself getting up to that standard where you're able to qualify without putting yourself at risk of burnout. So yeah, I think that would be my advice. Don't get overexcited and burn yourself out too quickly, because as you say, you're in it for the long run. You might qualify this year, but you've actually got to race the next year, so you can't burn yourself out in the first couple of months. So you've got to take it slowly, take it seriously, but train smart.
Wise words. And there's a great book out called 80-20 that is a really good read. Worth a look for anybody who wants to follow your lead there. So can't remember the author, but good book. Fantastic, great advice. Okay, next one is, what's your favorite bit of kit?
Ooh, good question. Oh, do you know what? I recently borrowed my friend's neoprene socks for open water swimming, and they are an absolute game changer. So I would recommend that to anybody who's either doing open water for the first time, or is like we're having to at the moment, battle through those cold conditions in open water.
I'm just going to make a note of that. Neoprene socks. I wish I had a pair.
Yeah, invest.
Yeah, that's a first on the podcast that somebody's actually said, because normally it's the bike or me trainers or whatever. So that's a first. So long-term and short-term goals.
Oh, short-term. I really want to focus on getting better on the bike. I am doing that by entering some crit races and time trials this year, which I've not done before, but obviously working for British Cycling, I've been convinced to do some British cycling races. So I'm hoping that will really help. So short-term goal is that getting the bike back up. And I think that should help with bike handling skills and things as well, definitely being part of those crit races.
Definitely.
Long term, I think I still need to work a little bit on psychology, and I definitely want to do a little bit more reading around it, and learning how to be in a really good place when you get to the race, because I think we all do so much great training, and then often what happens with me is it just falls apart at the start line and everything kind of goes to pot. So yeah, I'd love to learn more about that and kind of actually practice what I'm reading, and get better psychologically, which might take a bit of time.
Yeah, well, it's like everything, isn't it? You've got to train your mind. Like you've got to, it's almost like another discipline. Yeah, just at the bottom of your first email, you were talking about a range of topics associated with sports science and women in sport and coaching. So have you got anything that you do want to talk about, anything that you want to discuss that might help people?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably what I can talk about is a little bit around what my research has been in. So my research is, as I said, quite applied. So I've always very much been interested in monitoring training and monitoring overtraining, and I think it's probably something that a lot of age groupers, as we've said, fall into the trap of overtraining and more hours and training harder, and not knowing when to push and when to pull back. So a lot of my research has been about ways that recreational athletes, so not necessarily having to go into a lab, can work out when to push and when to pull back. So a couple of really simple things that I've seen to work really, really well through my research is really simple measures such as daily resting heart rate. So best way of monitoring your resting heart rate, I know that a lot of Garmin's will do it kind of throughout the day on your wristwatch. But really the best thing to do if you have the money, if you can invest in a Bluetooth chest strap instead, and use the chest strap. And the best way to do it is to just record it as soon as you get up in the morning, have your chest strap by your bed, put it on, and just lay for 2 minutes, and record your resting heart rate. And there's a couple of really good apps that you can get, like Elite Heart Rate Variability, which will also tell you your heart rate variability alongside your resting heart rate. Those two measures are really good, and we found in our research, so I monitored ultra marathon athletes, so they did an ultra marathon, and then I monitored their resting heart rate in the days afterwards, and for 3 days afterwards they had a raised resting heart rate in the morning, so a higher resting heart rate, because of that, what we call acute stress, so that stress of competing, and the long time of the race that they were at a high heart rate. So it took them 3 days for their resting heart rate to go back down to normal. So it's a really, really sensitive measure. And after that 3 days, we measured their performance alongside it, and their performance got back to normal as well. So it's a really sensitive measure to use. So a higher heart rate can show that you're under that acute stress. So you might want to measure that maybe after you've done a race and you're wanting to know when to get back into your training again. On the flip side, a lower resting heart rate, so a really low resting heart rate.
So what are we talking about, low?
So compared to your normal, normally with heart rate monitors, the error in the measurement, so the kind of daily fluctuation that you would naturally get, is around 3 beats. So if anything is around 3 beats from what you would consider normal, I wouldn't be too concerned about it. If it gets above that, so hitting kind of 5 beats to 6 beats difference, then that's when you should start waving a little flag. So 5 to 6 beats lower than normal on your resting heart rate can start to wave flags about chronic fatigue and overtraining, which is difficult because a lower resting heart rate can also mean that you're getting fitter and you're adapting well to training. But if it's coming alongside those feelings of tiredness, low mood, you're feeling like you're not training very well. I think a lot of us get a couple of sessions where it was easy one day and quite difficult the next day. And that coincides with that lower resting heart rate. Then altogether, those are really strong signs that your body is really yearning for some recovery. And recovery means full days of rest. Maybe take that time to do your flexibility training or a little bit of strength and conditioning. But really, if your heart rate is dipping that low, you should definitely take sort of 48 to 72 hours of rest to try and bring that back up. So that's a really easy way of monitoring it. Other things that we've played around with is a small warm-up test. And this is what my main research was about. A small warm-up test where you run using the RPE scales. So the RPE scale, if you're not aware of it, is a scale from 6 to 20. So 20 being call an ambulance, I'm absolutely out of it, I've completely exhausted myself. And 6 being, barely walking, just really, really low. So we got people to run for 3 minutes at an RPE of 10, 3 at 13, and then 3 at RPE 17, which ended up being sort of below threshold, at threshold, and just above threshold. And we monitored their heart rate and their running speed when they were doing that. So when feeling fresh, you would be running or cycling at a faster speed at each of those RPE intensities, and your heart rate would either be the same or maybe a little bit lower. If you're feeling fatigued, you'll be going slower at each of those paces, or you might see that your heart rate is higher, so you're getting that acute fatigue, which is driving that sympathetic stress, which makes your heart rate go higher. So that balance between heart rate and speed and how you're feeling are really great ways of telling whether you're ready to push or pull that session. So a really quick thing to do in your warm-up, and even you could just fix a power and keep that the same. So if you're jumping on your watt bike or your turbo for your warm-up, keep a really consistent warm-up. So do 3 or 5 minutes at the same power each time you warm up, and just see, is my heart rate higher today? Is my heart rate lower today? How am I feeling? Is it feeling easy? Is it feeling hard? And that will give you a really quick signal to whether you should push on that day or whether you should pull back. And it's important that you listen to that. And it's a really quick and simple way, I think, of tracking each day. And it just allows you then to give your body that adequate recovery that it is asking for, and not to push when you shouldn't be. And as you say, as we talked about earlier, it helps you to be a more sustainable athlete and keep this going for a longer period of time. If you're listening to those signals.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's simple but effective tests. Brilliant to be able to see how you're feeling, and actually there's no way out of that, is there? It's there in black and white or whatever. That's really good. Just, you mentioned the heart rate variability. I use heart rate for training every morning, and it's on the iPhone. So I just put the finger on the back of the camera and it takes a reading every morning. But how does that compare? Because that's a different reading. How does that compare with your heart rate?
Yeah, so heart rate variability measures the time between each beat. So if you are feeling well, actually, your body listens really closely to all of the signals it gets every single second from your body, and it will change your heart rate depending on those signals. So you'll find the variability in the time between each beat is highly variable, so you'll get a higher heart rate variability score. So your heart is listening. When your heart is tired and those systems controlling that heart is tired, it stops listening as closely to so many different signals, and you'll find it just plodding along. So the time between each beat isn't as reactive as it used to be. So your heart rate variability will decrease, and that's what shows up on that app. And I think some of them are really great. They give you a kind of green or a red signal, so you don't even really have to work it out too much.
Yeah, I mean, I've been using this quite a while now, and I've only ever had one red. I woke up this morning and I've got amber, and that's not really but I just wondered, because it's not only the heart rate that it measures, it then asks you for subjective answers to certain questions. So I'm just wondering, in your opinion, what do you think? I'm a bit of a skeptic to these things sometimes, and I just wonder, is it the information that I'm putting it in, are they taking that more to decide the score? Or, and I've tried to trick it sometimes to work it out, and I haven't been able to do it yet. So you can, because I mean, it's pretty much standard, the questions they ask. Well, they're the same questions every day, and it's how you're feeling, have you had alcohol, and all that sort of thing. How much do you think that changes the reading of the heart rate variability itself?
Interesting. I've never actually heard of the kind of two being integrated in the same app, so I'm not too sure what algorithm they're using. Yeah. So it might be better to keep them separate. So have a heart rate variability app, and then have those questions as well, which I think a couple of people who I train just keep a notepad by their bed. And it's so simple. You can either just, you create something yourself. So the three things I try and ask them is, how well have you slept out of 1 to 5?
Yeah, that's that.
Okay, good. So that's good. Muscle soreness.
That's another one.
Is the next one. And then general feeling. So are you feeling on a 1 to 5? How are you feeling? Just feeling. So those three things I think can be really, really great measures. And we actually saw in our research when we were doing the ultramarathon racing, that simple questionnaire asking you how your muscles were feeling and how you were feeling correlated or coincided really well with the heart rate measures and the performance measures and the bloods and everything that is very lab based and technical. Really just a piece of paper with a couple of simple questions on almost gave us, the exact results that we would have needed as coaches or practitioners. So I do think there's a lot of apps and there's a lot of technology that you can invest in out there, but really asking yourself simple questions, knowing your body really well, sometimes that knowledge can be just as powerful if used in the right way. So I think using both as you're doing is fantastic. But I'm not sure whether you're tricking your algorithm.
I was wondering. I mean, it's a well-renowned, I don't know whether it's it's a Spanish guy who came up with the app. And again, I listened to him on a podcast. And I thought it wasn't very much money for the whole app, and you have it for your life. And it's like, I thought, well, it's worth having a go. And the more I investigate, I thought, yeah, I mean, it does seem to correlate with how I feel. But I just wondered how much those questions actually affected. But it does say at the end, when it gives you its score, it says that your heart rate variability is trending X. But your subjective answers are Y, and it'll either say drop your intensity today, or you're okay to train as you. So I think it does sort of split it up. I guess I'm answering my own question here by thinking about it now. So, but yeah, it's a really handy thing to have, another weapon in the armor belt, so to say, of wellness.
Absolutely. And I think you've just got to find something that works for you. I had a couple of people that I was asking them to do stuff as soon as they wake up, like I was saying, and they were like, well, the kids wake me up, so I don't know when I'm going to wake up, and as soon as I wake up I need to sort them out, so actually that's not really going to work for me. So what else can I do? So you've just got to find something that fits into your lifestyle. And I think all these extra things should really only become a habit if it's adding something to your training or adding something to your life. If it's starting to become either an obsession or it's starting to become something that is actually stressing you out more than it's helping you, then block it, don't use it.
It's
is
funny
my
because
advice.
I was also listening to somebody on sleep the other day, and they were saying, yeah, all these things about sleep they're really good to follow, but when people become obsessive, it affects the sleep. So that's exactly what you've just said, isn't it? Just don't become obsessed with it. Just they're great tools to have if you can use them in the right way. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Is there anything else that you want to discuss, or are you?
No, I think that's been great. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. Really, really enjoyed it. Learned a lot as usual when I get people on. So thank you ever so much for coming on.
Bro,
Right.
no, thank you so much. No, it's been
No, it's a
great fun.
pleasure. So thanks once again to Hannah for coming on and telling us her story. It was really good. Really enjoyed the chat, and especially at the end when she was telling us some hints and tips about heart rate. Hope you enjoyed it as well, and thank you guys for listening. And if you'd like to leave a message or rate, go over to Apple Podcast and just leave your comments and 5 stars, and that helps us reach more of our community. And if you want to get in touch, you can find us on Instagram at amp_1967. You can find us on Facebook at ampgb. You can contact us on email, agegroupmultisportpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on YouTube at ampgb and Twitter at agegroupmultisportpodcast. So thank you once again, and remember, stay safe, keep training, and love the process.